Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Karin Helmstedt.
Greetings from Berlin and welcome to our highlights edition. Coming at you this time with the following topics. Success story. Fishlabs is a best-selling games developer from Hamburg. Branching out, two former investment bankers make it big in fashion. Detective work, how experts detect art forgeries. But we begin in Italy with something for lovers of fast cars, namely the opening of a brand new Ferrari Museum in Modena. The Italian car manufacturer has long been a frontrunner in terms of design and engineering, especially on the Formula One racetrack. The man behind it all was Enzo Ferrari, and this museum pays tribute not only to his life, but also shows the mark that his brand has made on today's motoring world.
A pioneering piece of design and a worthy monument to the great Enzo Ferrari. The building's roof is modeled after the hood of a car. After more than 5 years of construction, the Museo Casa Enzo Ferrari opened over the weekend in the Italian city of Modena.
It's an honor to be here today. I think it's great for Italy. He represents the best of Italy. He will represent the best of Italy, and he always did.
I was involved in this project since the beginning, and I remember the house completely lost and nothing here.
From now, the tifosi have a place where to go and hear about the story of my father and the passion of my father.
The house where Enzo Ferrari was born is now part of a museum, 6,000 square meters in size. Enzo's son, Piero Ferrari, is the brains behind the project. He's included several personal items belonging to his father. Originally a locksmith's apprentice, Ferrari Sr. became a race car driver and founded one of the world's most legendary sports car companies.
About my father has been written hundreds of books. Every person who met him, I wrote in the past, I know the real Ferrari, I know the real story about him, but was a very complex personality and very demanding, especially to myself, and was a very hard job to stay with him.
In addition to the personal possessions of Enzo Ferrari, one wing of the museum will display Ferrari automobiles as well as temporary exhibitions. The building was designed by leading architecture firm Future Systems.
Finally, we chose this very modern structure because it was always looking to the future, as you know. He was looking to new ideas. Yeah. And he was always trusting young people, young engineers, and young architects.
Andrea Morganti designed and built the museum together with the now deceased Jan Kaplitsky. They drew all their ideas from Enzo Ferrari's cars.
Those were our reference of inspiration. So when we started the competition, we were scanning pictures of details of engines and bonnets. You know, you see, I mean, look how beautiful the shape of this part. I mean, this is art, this is culture. And not many people see that. People just see a fast red car, but we knew the value, the artistic value. So we say, let's take this and let's make it a building. Let's make it really big as a building.
The dominant color in the new wing is yellow, the color of the Ferrari emblem. The building is meant to be sleek and innovative, just like Enzo Ferrari's creations.
Everything here is untested. This is a huge prototype and is an amazing challenge because no one did this roof before. This is a double curved aluminium roof. It's a three-dimensional piece of sculpture of 3,000 square meters. It's quite a challenge. Same thing for the facade. It's quite a technical challenge. So it has the same spirit that you find in building these cars.
The Museo Casa Enzo Ferrari resembles the big car museums of German manufacturers such as Porsche, BMW, and Mercedes. Their buildings cost much more than the one in Modena. Much of the 18 million euros needed for the Ferrari Museum came from the local authorities.
When you go to maybe one which is only for a brand, it has the impression of being like a showroom, like maybe you're being sold the idea or you're being sold the brand of that particular car. I think here it does feel freer. You're not having the corporate message shoved down your throat maybe quite so much.
They don't have the place where Enzo Ferrari was born. Maybe they have the place where Michael Schumacher was born, but they don't have Ferrari, so that's a good start for us.
The place where Enzo Ferrari grew up in relative poverty at the start of the 20th century provides the perfect setting to tell his success story.
Enzo taught us as a sort of life lesson never to give up, you know, even if it looks difficult, keep dreaming.
It's hoped the new museum will draw up to 200,000 visitors a year. Here they can retrace the Ferrari legend, even if most can't afford the trademark fast red sports car.
Well, if you're a game lover like my kids, then you've probably heard of Rally Master Pro or even Water Slide 2. Those are just two of the games created by the German developer Fishlabs. Last year, the Hamburg-based company won Best Studio 2011 and also received the German Innovation Award. Fishlabs specialize in games for small screens, and they like to enhance the experience for players with slick 3D images.
The expanse of outer space, as seen in the award-winning game Galaxy on Fire 2. The game follows the adventures of a space mercenary. It's played on mobile devices such as tablet computers or smartphones. It was developed by the Hamburg software company Fishlabs, which specialized early on in creating complex games for small screens.
Back then, people thought we were crazy. They said we could never seriously develop a 3D game on such a small display, and that it would never work. Tetris maybe, or text-based game, but never 3D.
When Fishlabs was founded 8 years ago, the first cell phone with 3D capabilities had just come on the market. Today, Fishlabs employs some 50 graphic artists, programmers, and 3D specialists. That's not many when you consider that Fishlabs ranks 14th on the list of the world's best digital game developers.
We love our games and we're absolutely passionate about what we do. I think that's the secret. We develop games that we enjoy playing ourselves.
Galaxy on Fire 2 was named the best mobile game at last year's German Computer Game Awards. In addition to space adventures, Fishlabs has also specialized in sports games. The boom in mobile games happened a year and a half ago, with smash hits such as Angry Birds from Finnish developer Rovio. It was followed by more hits such as Cut the Rope or Doodle Jump. Their basic principles are simple graphics and fast action. In contrast, Fishlabs emphasizes detailed graphics and complexity of play, making their games serious competition for the traditional console games, especially since at about €8, they're considerably less expensive. Fishlab developers spend 1 to 2 years working on a game.
You can sort of compare it to film production. I don't want to utter the word Hollywood, but we do have similar working processes. As you see here, we work with concept art, with mood boards, with storytelling. So there's a lot of similarity in that area.
Most of the employees are themselves enthusiastic players, and sometimes there's a crossover between their jobs and their private interests, such as with amateur race car driver Andreas Stecher. He's the sales manager for what are called advertising games, such as this racing series for a famous German car maker. The game is free and it's financed by advertising clients. With more than 55 million downloads, Fishlabs is the world's most successful developer of these kinds of games.
There's that thing when you're driving and the car starts to work against the steering wheel. That drifting that lets you know you're on the edge of losing control. That's what's called the bummometer. When you notice that the car's getting close to the limit, and that's missing here, we can't reproduce that feeling.
The challenge for the developers is that the games have to be programmed to work on several different devices: smartphones, tablet computers, or regular PCs.
The developments and trends are really heading toward real cross-platform gaming, meaning a game that I can play across several platforms, often with or against others, but still using different devices.
The Hamburg developers are influencing how computer games will be played in the future, whether alone or in pairs, at home or on the road. If it were up to Fishlabs, there would be no limits.
Well, speaking of limits, back in 2008, the recession hit the world markets, and in London, that saw some 20,000 bankers out of a job and forced to find some alternative work. Well, it was tough times for a while, but two businessmen now see that as a blessing in disguise because it encouraged them to start their own company, which is now earning them quite a tidy sum.
Made-to-measure suits from fine wool are just as much a status symbol as a luxury watch or expensive car. But few men are willing to spend a lot of money on one. James Sleater and Ian Meiers love bespoke suits. As city bankers, they wore them every day. Now suits have become their profession.
I mean, it's very rare for someone in London to actually make anything. We're right in the middle of the financial district. There's money going everywhere, and all you're doing is moving one electronic figure to another place. Whereas we're actually creating something. You're seeing something made, which is actually quite rare in London and England in general. So it's the kind of passion for making something and actually seeing it on the customer and a happy customer leaving at the end of the process.
As investment bankers, James Sleater and Ian Meiers handled hundreds of millions of pounds on a daily basis. Then came the crisis, and they were out the door with a golden handshake. That served as start-up capital in a new venture that fills a niche in the men's clothing industry.
The gap in the market is the fact that, Savile Row is exceedingly expensive and not that many people can afford to go or have the courage to go. And then there's a large amount of low-end tailors making very average, very cheap-looking suits. Everyone knows you can fly to Thailand and buy a cheap suit. That's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to try and make a high-end product as possible and make it as open to as many people as possible.
Cad and the Dandy are based in the city, London's financial district, where they're surrounded by former colleagues. It wasn't hard to find cheap retail space here during the financial crisis. But what do investment bankers know about custom tailoring?
Well, my mother was a tailoress, so I had a basic understanding of it first of all. But we employ a Savile Row trained tailor. So he's been training all this up, and it's something you can't rush. It takes time to learn. So a combination of continuous training and practical experience.
Now Cad and the Dandy are making an average of 400 suits per month. You'd have to spend around €3,000 on Savile Row, but here a suit costs €900. The two ex-bankers have got the maths right.
We charge a customer up front, and in return we pay things like all of our fabric merchants on the day we order cloth. And that means that we save about 30 to 40% on any cloth that we buy. So it means that our costs are much lower. So there are big helps in having a free cash flow to pay your suppliers. They then all want to work with you, and they give you lower prices.
Once a customer's had his measurements taken, he can order more suits over the internet and choose the style, details and fabrics. The company has 7 tailors in London and 30 more in China.
One of the fundamental parts of our business is actually how we've modernised the tailoring business. So traditionally, people in Savile Row, it's all paper-based. They'll send invoices out. Some tailors we know down there still use typewriters to send invoices out. So it's incredibly inefficient.
They're also active on Facebook and Twitter, and every year they select a best-dressed banker.
We had articles written about it in the Mumbai Times, the Wall Street Journal covered it, CNN covered it. So it's given us a lot of publicity. And, that's, of course, part of the reason why we do these things. It is to sort of get our name out there in a sort of fun way.
The two fashion entrepreneurs have just opened their 4th outlet in London. Their business concept seems to be working. The idea was to make a tidy sum, not as, but with well-dressed bankers.
Well, also out to make a tidy sum are art thieves and forgers. And with the art market fetching record prices in recent years, the motivation to pass off a few copies of a masterpiece is certainly enormous. And if you're wondering how museums and well-placed collectors actually know they're dealing with an authentic work, well, we met up with two professionals who showed us how they recognize a fake from the real thing.
Petra Breidenstein's investigative skills are vital for private collectors and museums. The Berlin-based restorer examines old oil paintings to determine whether they're genuine or fake.
When the art market booms and many people are investing in art, the market for forgers booms too.
The market is booming, with artworks fetching record prices at auctions. But not everything that goes under the hammer is genuine. Some experts doubt the authenticity of Vincent van Gogh's famous sunflowers. In 1987, it changed hands for more than 35 million euros, making it possibly the world's most expensive forgery. This picture was attributed to Claude Monet and hung for years in a Cologne museum, but it's a fake. When Petra Breidenstein appraises an artwork, the first thing she does is to examine it closely. She relies on her trained eye and her experience.
I look at the front, but also the backs, as they reveal a lot. What is the fabric of the canvas like? I look at the frame and the brush strokes, at the surface. Where is the signature, and what surface is it on? Is it at the top or the bottom?
The next step involves a microscope. Fine cracks in the layers of paint reveal a great deal about a painting's age and origin. Breidenstein admits that it's often a tough call, as experienced forgers know how to make new pictures look old. They paint on old canvases or wood.
If a forgery is good enough, it can even fool an expert with many years of experience. That's why technical and scientific examinations are of such great importance.
Heike Stege from Munich is a specialist in scientific analysis. One of the tools she uses most is X-rays. They can reveal the existence of an older work that's been painted over.
With forgeries, we often find the remains of previous depictions that have only been partly removed or not at all. With fakes, you might find traces of old layers of paint that have been scraped off with a palette knife.
This is how it came to light that the man with the golden helmet wasn't actually a Rembrandt after all. An X-ray revealed it was missing the preliminary drawing typical of Rembrandt's works. If an X-ray doesn't provide conclusive evidence, then Heike Stege uses a scalpel to take a paint sample. Certain colors can often be attributed to a specific painter. The final check involves a scanning electron microscope. From just a small sample, it provides a cross-section of the individual layers of paint, seen on the monitor as vermilion between blue and green oil paint. If she finds a pigment that didn't exist in the era the picture was allegedly painted in, it's confirmed as a fake.
The final step is to bring all the results together and interpret them. Then, in the best-case scenario, we can say we have no doubts that a painting is authentic.
Experts have no doubts that these Renaissance masterpieces are genuine. But they're not always so sure about other artworks. Some experts say there are forgeries everywhere and that it often takes decades or even centuries to identify them.
And finally, the Borusan Istanbul Philharmonic Orchestra is busily planning for its first European tour. It was a broad-minded local businessman who put this orchestra together after he decided that it was high time to put the Turkish city on the map in terms of Western classical music. Here's the story.
Istanbul, the vibrant metropolis on the Bosphorus, has never been a center of Western classical music. But 13 years ago, the Borusan Istanbul Philharmonic Orchestra was founded in the hope of changing that.
The aim is, of course, like all the orchestras probably in the world, is to be among the world-class, S-class orchestras. We are working for that really hard.
Ahmet Koçabiek funds the orchestra. He's the CEO of the Borusan Holding Company, whose business dealings bring in billions of euros. He donates some 4 million euros to his orchestra each year. Ahmet Koçabiek declines requests for television interviews. We're told he prefers to keep a low profile. But Sasha Götzl, who's been the orchestra's artistic director and chief conductor since 2008, has nothing against the limelight. The 41-year-old Austrian says the position has a lot to offer.
I have more freedom than anywhere else because the administrative structure is so small. We have only 3 people making executive decisions, and their main concern is that the orchestra keeps developing artistically. As far as the program is concerned, soloists, repertoire, I have all the freedom I need as long as I keep the orchestra developing. And that makes it one of the most thrilling places in the world for a young conductor.
Every month, Sasha Götzl flies from Austria to Istanbul for a few days of rehearsals. The orchestra is made up of 80 freelance musicians from all over Turkey. They come together for about 25 concerts a year. Their biggest achievement to date was an invitation to play at the opening of the prestigious Salzburg Festival, a first for an orchestra from Turkey.
The way we played in Salzburg gave a jolt to the whole classical scene in Turkey. We were all over the Turkish media. And the coverage made people realize that Turkey has an orchestra that has earned a place in the international scene. Even in Austria, one of the centers of classical music. It was quite a leap.
The headquarters of Ahmet Koçabiek's Borusan Holding is directly on the Bosphorus, the strait separating Europe from Asia. It's hard not to notice that the CEO is a passionate art collector. During the week, these offices manage the operations of one of Turkey's biggest conglomerates. On the weekend, they function as an art gallery that's open to public viewing. This is Koçabiek's office. The furnishings reveal his love of music.
There are certain composers that he really likes, Beethoven, for example. But last year we never played a single Beethoven symphony and it didn't bother him. He's incredibly curious about new compositions. Every time we play one of these big new pieces, he sits in the audience. He can't always come because he's often away on business, but he has a very positive attitude and always really supports us.
The premiere concert for the orchestra's new CD included 20th century compositions. They were recorded on the company's grounds since Istanbul doesn't have a major recording studio. The orchestra plays most of its concerts in the conference center, which is an acoustic compromise. But its 1,600 seats are regularly sold out.
Finding a venue to play in is a problem. It's hard to believe, but Istanbul, which is more than 1,000 years old, doesn't have a good concert hall. We're doing everything to try to build one, but there's no space in the center of Istanbul.
Already considered Turkey's best, the Borusan Istanbul Philharmonic hopes to one day be ranked among Europe's finest orchestras. All it needs now is a concert hall to call home.
And hopefully that won't take too much longer now. Well, that's all for this week's edition of our Euromaxx Highlights. We hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, alles Gute aus Berlin und tschüss.